Blog Talk Radio.
Welcome to the 415. I'm Raina Starr. With me, as always, is the amazing Star Bustamonte. Say hello, Star.
Hello, Star.
Happy Indictment Day. The 415 is brought to you by The Wild Hunt and Desperate House Witches. Oh my God, this is going to be great. There will be cursing. There will be talk of all kinds of things like riots and January 6th. There will be opinions that belong to me and my co-host and no one else. So, with all of that being said, let me just start, and we will get back to the indictment, of course. But first up, we would like to talk about something's going on in Atlanta. Journalist George Cheedy uncovered the fake elector meeting in Atlanta and testified before the grand jury in Fulton County. What up with that? What did he find? What was he testifying about?
So, according to George himself, who I know, basically he was there, when they were after the election, and he sees all of these Republicans going into this room, and George is a journalist and a very good one, and so he's like, oh, what's going on in here? So they didn't want to let him into the room, and he's like, so what are you guys doing? And they're like, oh, we're having a meeting about education. And George was like, that's very odd. And so he just kept poking, and ultimately that's what they were doing. It was all the people who were trying to assemble, like the fake electors. And he got to testify before the grand jury. Now, what this also means is that as a result of that, he will be able to be in the courtroom when if Trump has to testify, he'll be able to be in the courtroom. And as a journalist, of course, he can cover it, but he's also he's a witness. So basically, George's nosiness pays off. Which for anyone who doesn't know, journalists we're a nosy lot. We when we see something that we're like, well, what's that all about? Then we're going to keep poking when we don't get satisfactory answers. And George is an excellent journalist, and he just kept poking. And as a result of that, he testified before the grand jury, which is in Fulton County, which is huge. And that case is moving forward. So it'll be very interesting. That'll be very interesting. Arraignment day. It's arraignment day in D.C., but there are some other things that have been happening that are that add extra gravity to the arraignment that is going to take place today.
I don't understand how anybody needs more gravity or more proof or more witnesses or more evidence. It's extraordinarily clear what happened. There has been testimony about phone calls that were made to Georgia about finding votes. Obviously, this whole idea of I didn't know I had lost the election, that's a defense. But we'll get to that. There's also more shenanigans. What about Michigan? Michigan had an interesting thing happen. What's up? What up, Michigan? Hey.
Well, so Michigan, the Attorney General charged 16 people total, and each of them face 8 felony charges that have to do with basically with forgery. Wow. You know, these were the fake electors. You know, and it's worth noting that anybody who has participated in these schemes, and keep in mind that these were schemes that, you know, we're not just talking, like, Michigan has brought charges, Georgia is, you know, in the process of bringing charges, but these were schemes that were you know, that they were attempting to carry out in multiple states. Basically any state that Trump thought he should have won, it was going on in all of those states. So I think it's safe to say that this is very likely the beginning, and nowhere near the end. You know, keep in mind that you know, I mean, this is just pretty astounding, really.
Yeah, I'm perplexed at how nothing. I mean, with all of the evidence presented so far, again, this is not the first indictment day. This is just another one. We had a previous indictment day, and we're probably going to have more indictment days after, I'm assuming. But what do people need to be convinced about the corruption? I don't understand how people are looking at this and saying, oh, they're just out to get Trump. Yeah, because he broke the law. Is it just me or what?
Well, okay, so first of all, you have to realize that the people who are diehard Trumpers, nothing that happens or is said will sway them, okay? Like nothing. Okay, so let's just get that right out of the way. There are a good percentage of you know, forever Trumpers, MAGAs, whatever you want to call them. It doesn't matter what is said, what happens. They're not going to believe anything, and you can just pretty much write those folks off. It doesn't matter, okay? It doesn't matter that he basically called for his followers to, you know, to go after Mike Pence, his own vice president. They don't care about that, you know, which, by the way, I want to interject here real quickly that, you know, Pence has made his strongest statement yet yesterday.
Yes. Yesterday.
And finally just said it, you know, that this was wrong, that Trump was wrong, and that you can't do what he did. But the other factor you have to take into consideration here is that there's a whole lot of people that have the potential to get scooped up in this whole thing, right? Because, you know, it wasn't just 16 people. It wasn't just 16 people in Michigan, and these are small potatoes, basically. Very small potatoes. This has the potential to involve some very high-profile folks, and if you think those people aren't, I mean, and we're talking about elected officials. We're talking about, you know, the Josh Hawleys of the world and the Lindsey Grahams and other prominent Republicans, you know, I mean, what would have been considered the fringe of the party even 10 years ago are now the core of the party. And if Trump goes down, there's a good chance that many of them will be charged and go down as well. Plus, you can expect that Trump will flip to save his own ass. He will deflect blame onto other Republicans and say, well, it wasn't my idea or whatever. I mean, lately they've been, they kind of were floating this balloon of that, that Trump was so delusional that he believed it. So that's kind of been their defense. But I mean, that's not going to fly. It's not going to fly, and all of these people are at risk. So they are going to continue to proliferate this story that it is politically motivated, that it's a witch hunt, that that he shouldn't be charged, that he shouldn't, that if they convict him, it's that it's all political theater, all of this, which I want to remind our listeners that he was not indicted by politicians. He was not indicted, yes, the DOJ put forth the case, but he was indicted by a grand jury of average folks. Average folks. When they do jury pool, it's like anybody can be called. And that's who handed down this indictment. So I think that's a very important point to remember. But as for what's it going to take? I mean, there is a percentage that you just got to write off. They're not going to believe anything. And the people who are in positions of power, who are going to be threatened with losing their seat, they will hang on till their last dying breath if they think that there is some hope of saving themselves by supporting Trump. But I think that once things really start to get grim, like they're not already, but apparently they haven't gotten that memo yet, that some of these people will start flipping. If it looks like a choice between, I may lose my seat, and, oh, golly, I could go to prison on felony charges and never be able to run for office again, then, they're more likely to cough up what they know. So, yeah,
I'm,
wild.
One of the things that kind of surprises me, or maybe it shouldn't surprise me, I don't know. I mean, because now he's like blaming attorney John Eastman. John Eastman was one of his attorneys at some point. And Trump is saying that, his attempt to overthrow the duly elected, the results of a well-done election was based on legal advice from his lawyer, John Eastman. It's like, I'm waiting for more drags of Giuliani and Sidney Powell. I'm still hopeful that Roger Stone will be part of this whole. I just want Roger Stone gone because he's such a smug prick. But obviously that has nothing to do with the news, because it isn't news that he's a prick. Everyone knows. But the idea that this guy is going to deflect, having had admitted to some people that he knew he had lost the election. See, if he had never said any of that, if he had never whined like a child to half the people in his vicinity at all times, that might have been a viable defense. But he didn't. It's all a complete sham. It's all a complete lie. But yet, you think today's kind of a nothing burger. Tell me why. Well,
I mean, this is pretty standard stuff. Okay, so the indictment has already been handed down. Basically an arraignment is just they're gonna read the charges against him, and then they'll enter a plea. Or they'll say, yeah, when we plead not guilty, and based on blah blah blah, whatever legal precedent they're going to, now, what would make it less of a nothing burger is if they say that, if they plead not guilty by diminished capacity or something along those lines. That would make it really interesting, but I don't think that's going to happen. I think, that their argument is going to be that, that this is a political witch hunt and blah, 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 the same bullshit, although there's not really any legal standing there. So, fucking good luck with that. But so this is, the only thing extraordinary about this is the fact that this is a former president that has been indicted on federal charges, that are, the charges that, let's talk a little bit about the indictment because, this indictment, and I want to say that, the fact that it's 45 pages long is like perhaps the most delightful of, ironies that there are. But, so there's 4 counts in this indictment.
Wait, I want to interject just before we go to that, and I want to say, hey, folks, support your favorite pagan paper, The Wild Hunt. Check out wildhunt.org. Give it all your support. It needs your support. Why? Because Wild Hunt has real journalists doing real journalism. We need real journalism. We are heading into an election season again. Lives will be spun again. Therefore, we need to have journalism we can rely on. That would be at wildhunt.org. Consider giving them a generous donation or become a sustaining member. Give the less than the price of a cup of coffee. You can get it every day in your inbox where it belongs. That's wildhunt.org. Thank you. Speaking of which, said indictment and 45 pages, I am holding in my very hand this indictment. And while I have not had a chance to read all of it yet because I actually have a day job, there have been some points that have delighted me and upset me at the same time because I can't believe this is my country. Star, go ahead and start talking about the 4 counts, if you would.
All right, so there's 4 counts. The first one is conspiracy to defraud the United States. Count 2 is conspiracy to obstruct an official proceeding. Count 3 is obstruction of and attempt to obstruct an official proceeding. And count 4 is conspiracy against rights. And it's count 4 that probably carries the most weight because it's obstructing it's basically violating people's voting rights. Yeah.
Correct.
And if he's convicted on that, he cannot run. He can never hold office again. So
I can hope.
So there is that. Before you go on with what you're going to read, I just want to say that looking at this indictment, okay, like as soon as this, like I heard that the indictment had been unsealed on, I think, Tuesday when I was driving home from work, and I was like, holy shit, okay. And so the first thing I did when I came home was, I got home just in time to watch Jack Smith's rather brilliant presser, which was short, to the point, and at the same time gracious where the people that he works with are concerned. But anybody who has any ties to all of this, whether we're that basically tried to change the outcome of the election, I sincerely believe that many of them peed their pants when they heard that presser.
Absolutely.
The indictment itself is very plainly written, and that was deliberate so that people could read it. So the average person who's not a lawyer could read the indictment and understand exactly what the points were. And it's brilliantly written, and it's clear. You know,
it is
a
very
fourth grader
clear.
could get it.
And that is why, because I know some folks have, and I'm not going to sit here and read 45 pages, but I will read. Well, I might, if you let me, I might, because quite frankly, folks need to hear what it says. Now, I am going to start the 45 pages. I have printed it out, and Star just gave you all of the counts, the 4 counts, okay? And I'm going to read to you the introduction, and it says, number 1, the defendant, Donald J. Trump, was the 45th President of the United States and a candidate for re-election in 2020. The defendant lost the 2020 presidential election. Point 2, despite having lost, the defendant was determined to remain in power. So for more than 2 months following Election Day, on November 3rd, 2020, the defendant spread lies that there had been outcome determinative fraud in the election and that he had actually won. These claims were false, and the defendant knew that they were false, but the defendant repeatedly, widely disseminated them anyway to make his knowingly false claims appear legitimate, create an intense national atmosphere of mistrust and anger, and erode public faith in the administration of the election. So this speaks to the fact that he refused to concede, okay, and continued to, while he knew he had lost, continued to tell everyone he had won. Okay, point number 3. The defendant had a right, like every American, to speak publicly about the election and even to claim falsely that there had been outcome determinative fraud during the election and that he had won. Which means he was allowed to lie, because you don't go to jail for just lying, apparently. Although I don't know, I have a problem with that, but that's me. He was also, going back to this, he was also entitled to formally challenge the results of the election through lawful and appropriate means, such as by seeking recounts or audits of the popular vote, filing lawsuits, challenging ballots and procedures. Okay? Indeed, in many cases, the defendant did pursue these methods of contesting the election results. His efforts to change the outcome in any state through recounts, audits, or legal challenges were uniformly unsuccessful. All of it, in essence, okay, stepping away from this for a minute, in essence, everything he tried to do failed. There was no widespread outcome determinative fraud, is what that means. All that fraud he talked about did not exist. It could not be found through any of the means. Point number 4. Shortly after Election Day, the defendant also pursued unlawful means of discounting legitimate votes and subverting the election results. In doing so, the defendant perpetrated 3 criminal conspiracies. A conspiracy to defraud the United States by using dishonesty, fraud, and deceit to impair, obstruct, and defeat the lawful federal government function by which the results of the presidential election are collected, counted, and certified by the federal government in violation of 18 U.S.C. 371. Okay, so that's, now, this is not flying in the face of did he have a right to lie. These are 2 separate things. A conspiracy to defraud is to gather other people and create a lie that is perpetrated as fact through other people. Okay, so in essence, it wasn't him just saying that the election was a fraud and a sham and he actually won. He conspired to get legal officials to join him in a conspiracy. That is not legal, okay? If you want to stand on a street corner and lie your ass off, you're allowed to do that. But when you try to get a whole bunch of people together to do something criminally through lies and fraud, that is not legal. Am I correct on that, Star?
Correct.
Thank you.
I mean, yes, you got it.
Okay, B, a conspiracy to corruptly obstruct and impede the January 6th congressional proceeding at which the collected results of the presidential election are counted and certified. So for those who don't remember, January 6th was not a random day. It was a very specific day, and it was determined by them that this was the time to stop the certification, okay, the certification proceeding to officially name Joe Biden as our new president, okay? This is in violation of 18 U.S.C. 1512. And C, a conspiracy against the right to vote and to have one's vote counted in violation of 18 U.S.C. 241. Okay, what does that mean? In essence, what Trump wanted to do was to throw out your vote and overturn the election. In essence, the voting rights that we have, that we keep screaming, everyone must vote, everyone must vote, he attempted to nullify your right as a citizen to have your vote counted, because his aim was to be reinstalled, actually not reinstalled, he just wanted to maintain power. Now, there's a whole bunch of things at work here. A lot of people believe that Trump wants to be president because he just enjoys the power. Then there are some of us who also believe that Trump wants to stay in power because he wants to turn the country into a dictatorship. Then there's a lot of us who believe that Trump wants to be in power so he doesn't go to jail. All three things can be true. What say you, Josh?
Well, yes, all of those theories are not mutually exclusive, and they can all be true. I think if you look at what has happened since he has been out of office and what the horrible implications, especially for the war that Russia started with Ukraine, the outcome would likely have been far different because if Trump was in power, he would have wanted to probably give weapons to Putin and not to Ukraine, and would have been unable and unwilling to rally support with all of the European nations to support Ukraine. So I think that there is some of all of those theories is true. How big a factor that they play, I mean, but just like the case with the documents, like my personal opinion is that the entire time that he was in office, he was likely sharing things that should not have been shared and probably selling them for his own personal profit to foreign governments or foreign agents, and I mean, and then there's still the question of, the amount of grift that Jared
the
got.
son-in-law.
Yes,
the son-in-law.
Jared Kushner.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
Got,
Yep.
There are unexplained billions that he got from Saudi Arabia, which incidentally, now that Musk is at the helm of what used to be Twitter, Saudi Arabia is one of his largest investors. They basically can have control. So I think all of these pieces, when you start lining them up, it gives you a pretty clear picture of the direction that certain elements within this country would like to see things moved. Unfortunately for them, we still have a democracy, and today's arraignment is absolutely evidence of that democracy playing out.
Yeah.
So, but you look at, anybody that wants to read this indictment, it is online. There's probably not a single reliable news source that does not have the indictment available to be read online. And it goes through very clearly and outlines all of the charges. And it also names there are 6 unnamed co-conspirators who are unindicted at this point because they have willingly given testimony as to the role that they played in the conspiracy to basically overthrow all of the votes of people, anyone who voted for Biden, that they were intent on nullifying those votes in order to keep Trump in power. And
absolutely.
Of the 6, 4 of those unnamed co-conspirators are attorneys. Well, they probably won't be long before we can say they were attorneys, because even if charges aren't brought against them, it's pretty serious accusations. And then co-conspirator 4 was a official with the Justice Department. That's a little eye-popping. And number 6 is a political consultant.
Mm-hmm.
And it is absolutely stunning to read. So I'm just going to go through and I'm going to read what. So co-conspirator 1.
Yes.
An attorney who was willing to spread knowingly false claims and pursue strategies that the defendant's 2020 re-election campaign attorneys would not. Okay?
Mm-hmm.
Co-conspirator number 2, an attorney who devised and attempted to implement a strategy to leverage the vice president's ceremonial role overseeing the certification proceeding to obstruct the certification of the presidential election.
Uh-huh.
I'm going to go back through and tell you who these folks are, too. But co-conspirator number 3, an attorney whose unfounded claims of election fraud the defendant privately acknowledged to others sounded crazy.
Uh-huh.
Nonetheless, the defendant embraced and publicly amplified co-conspirator number 3's disinformation. Co-conspirator number 4, a Justice Department official who worked on civil matters and who, with the defendant, attempted to use the Justice Department to open sham election crime investigations and influence state legislatures with knowingly false claims of election fraud. Co-conspirator number 5, an attorney who assisted in devising and attempting to implement a plan to submit fraudulent slates of presidential electors to obstruct the certification proceedings. Mm-hmm. And then, finally, co-conspirator number 6, a political consultant who helped implement a plan to submit fraudulent slates of presidential electors to obstruct the certification proceeding. I mean, this is pretty stunning. You think you've seen it all, and then you like read this, and you're just like, "Holy Christ, what the fuck?" Like, how did they even think that they would get away with this? I mean, this is
exactly.
And so, as for the co-conspirators, Rudy Giuliani, of course, is co-conspirator number one.
Yep.
John Eastman is co-conspirator number two. Dear old Sidney Powell, who's just crazier than a shithouse rat, is number three.
For sure.
And the Justice Department official is Jeffrey Clark. And I want to point out that I only got one of these. I wasn't sure about the Justice Department official, but like right off the bat, I had the first three attorneys. I was like, that's a no-brainer, because they, in the indictment, you can read what they testified to, and it's like, oh well, fuck yeah, that's Giuliani. There's no question.
Right.
And then the fifth attorney, co-conspirator number 5, is Kenneth Chesebro, which
I have to say that wasn't on my bingo card. No, mine either. Although I will say that anybody who has been following this online, like as you know, political and news analysts were figuring this out by going through like what was said and the dates and whatnot, there were numerous jokes about, Chesebro. If you look at his name, it was almost like Cheesebro, and so the Cheesebro jokes were pretty fucking epic. As of right now, nobody's quite sure who the political consultant is that helped Chesebro. But I'm sure Raina has some thoughts. I do have some thoughts, and it's not just because I can't stand him, but because he fits the description. I'm going with Roger Stone. What are your thoughts?
Excuse me. Well, the list is so fucking long of people this could be. I mean, I've been kind of like looking online and seeing what other people have to say. Because they're a political consultant, that means that it's not anybody that was in the administration, right?
Right.
They would have listed them differently. So this is somebody that was not appointed or overseeing anything. It's somebody that's probably pretty close to Trump and pretty fucking crazy. Now, granted, Stone certainly fits that bill, but Stone is also pretty fucking smart. So I think it's less likely that it is him. Bannon certainly comes to mind.
Oh, shit. I forgot about him. Holy crap, that makes perfect sense. Wow. Can I trade mine in for Steve Bannon? Oh, I want to trade mine in for Steve Bannon. I like that.
I think we should start a pool, and and all proceeds go to the Wild Hunt. But that's just me. Cleta Mitchell is another one. I've seen people saying, "Oh, please, let it be Jenny Thomas." I
doubt it. I don't think so.
She's up to her ass in it. She helped organize the January 6th rally. She was hip deep in that. Some of the other suggestions. Boris Epstein, which is kind of would be like a personal favorite of mine because he's just the worst kind of scum that there is, and also has ties to Sinclair Broadcasting. So it would be delicious if it was him, because that could blow back on Sinclair, which would not hurt my feelings. Some of the other names that have been tossed around, Jenna Ellis, is another. There was a whole can of crazy. Like, if anyone who watched the January 6th Select Committee hearings, I mean, there was no shortage of crazy people that were, when we heard testimony from some of the White House attorneys, and I mean, there was a whole gang of crazy happening. My guess is it's somebody probably that was close to Eastman and also close to Chesbrough. It could be any of them. Any of them.
True.
I mean, at that point, I'm trying to think, how far out of it was Bannon? Because wasn't he off, like, somewhere in Europe setting up some, conservative Nazi lookalike camp for, conservatives? I mean, at that time? I can't really remember.
Time where there was a falling out between them at one point, and then, they kissed and made up, or whatever it is that these men do after they've had a spat. But, Bannon, one minute Trump loved him, the next minute Trump hated him. I can't even begin to figure out what that situation is. But you bring up some really good points, and absolutely some viable candidates for being number 6. There is no doubt. I just personally am so sick of Roger Stone, and I've been sick of Roger Stone for many, many years because he's a smug bastard, and he gets away with all kinds of insane bullshit that just drives me nuts. But while I have a moment, I want to remind, please support the Wild Hunt. Please check out wildhunt.org. We're talking about journalism. Journalism is important. We need real journalism. We're going to need real journalism, especially during this political campaign. We already know that AI has been used in very creative ways to sound like people, to make phone calls, to send emails. I'm getting more AI attacks in my life now than I ever have before. If you think it was bad last campaign, last election cycle, I'm telling you, they are ready to ramp it up. Please check out wildhunt.org. It is so important. Real journalism matters. Thank you very much. Okay, back to the show. So Trump pleads not guilty on all charges. Gee, what a fucking surprise that is.
Like I said, it's a nothing burger, The only thing that would have made it not a nothing burger, like I said, if they pleaded not guilty due to diminished capacity, if a bunch of idiots showed up if a bunch of idiots showed up and tried to storm the courtroom, but overall, this was going to go exactly as it was supposed to go. It's an arraignment. They go, they read the charges, and then they enter a plea. And so that is, this is, and let me just say that an arraignment should be a nothing burger. It should be boring. It should not be, the building should not catch on fire. It should not. There should not be anything extraordinary happening. Just the fact that we have a former president who's been indicted and arraigned on charges is extraordinary all on its own. It doesn't need, we don't need folks juggling flaming torches or, any other nonsense. That's plenty. How quickly this moves is the next thing to watch. This is not Florida. The judge in this case has handed out, which I want to be really clear that there's probably not a judge in D.C. at the federal level that has not heard January 6th cases, okay? Right. Because all of those cases are, have been brought in the D.C. federal court. So this judge in particular has handed down some of the harshest sentences for January 6th insurrectionists. She has handed down sentences that were more than what the DOJ has asked for. So this is not Florida. This is not a Trump-appointed judge, although there have been plenty of Trump-appointed judges that have heard January 6th cases, and some of them have, almost all of them have given handed out sentences that were well within the guidelines for the charges of the case. So, and it was really luck of the draw. I mean, these cases are assigned by rotation and randomly. I mean, it's not like somebody said, "Oh, let's give so and so this one." That's not how it works. It's like it's automated and random. Nobody could have known who was gonna get the case. So. Right. This has the potential to move more quickly than some of the other cases. And, this makes indictment number 3 for him?
Yes.
So there'll be more. I mean, I think there's going to be more. And I think that the way that they've listed all the co-conspirators as unindicted, has implications as well. And I think that the potential for there being a very wide net and more people being caught up in this are the fact that they didn't indict the co-conspirators at this time means that, other people are more likely forward or to give up information. So this is just the beginning, and I think it's going to get ugly. I think that ultimately we'll probably see violence around this, but this is huge. It's huge.
Let me ask you a question. Is there a possibility that the co-conspirators will not be indicted?
It depends on what kind of deals they worked out. Okay. If any of the information that they gave was false or misleading, then they could certainly be charged. I mean, typically when you have someone labeled as an unnamed, unindicted co-conspirator, that signifies that they have cooperated to, to avoid charges. But, we'll see. We'll see what happens.
The reason, and I ask this because I don't trust anybody who is part of this whatsoever. But I was just wondering if it would be possible for Giuliani to cooperate, because I keep hearing weird stuff like Giuliani is cooperating, but he's not turning on Trump. I don't know how that's possible. Is it possible that he could do that, number one? Number two, wouldn't Trump turn on him in a half a second? Why is he protecting him?
Well, that's the $64,000 question, isn't it? So I mean, so he can give up details of things like of what he did or said, and especially confirming, public statements and whatnot, and cooperate. But I mean, this is just the beginning. So, for now, they're all unindicted, and that's probably based on the information and whatever deal that they struck. But like I said, if they lied to investigators, if they gave false statements, under oath, I mean, even if part of it's true but part of it's not, then they could still face charges. To be completely honest, I'm not 100% sure when you're talking at the federal level what that all might entail. But the fact that so far they've not been indicted suggests that they've left the door open for a reason, and that's for other people to give testimony. Because if they're like, well, Giuliani cooperated and he didn't get indicted, so maybe I could tell what I know and it buy me some protection from being indicted. But I mean, and just because that they're not indicted on these charges doesn't mean that there are not other charges that they could possibly be charged with. Other things that they could be charged with, depending on what their level of involvement was. Now, any of these folks that have good attorneys, a good attorney is gonna negotiate. Okay, we'll give you this information, but my client wants assurance that they will not be charged. So I mean, it really comes down to what kind of deal they've struck, what kind of information that they've given, whether the information is true or not. All of that matters. But I mean, this is liable to be something we're going to be. This is just the beginning. This is going to be ongoing, and
I'm concerned about people getting fatigued with this, because it can drag on for so long. One of my biggest concerns, obviously, is that he can still run for president while this is all happening. And his poll numbers have gone up amongst his supporters. So, he could be trying to run out the clock. There's all kinds of chicanery that can happen while we're watching this, go down from a legal standpoint. He can very well be the first president, potentially, to have all of these indictments, to be found guilty, and to still run for president and win. It's just terrifying.
Well, if he's convicted on the fourth count, he cannot.
On the fourth, right, the fourth count. But if he happens to escape the fourth count, what happens?
Well, first of all, I don't think he's going to win. I don't know that he's going to run. I mean, he's running, but whether he'll be on the ballot or not remains to be seen.
Really? Okay.
They can nominate him, but, we'll see. We'll see what happens. I remain optimistic. I think that, 2020 proved that people still believe in facts and the truth, and they still managed to vote, regardless of all of the, fuckery that's been going on. So we're just going to have to wait and see. But it's definitely something that we're going to hear a lot more about, and I think that there'll be charges possibly in other states and against some of these other people that are involved. One thing's for sure, it will not be boring. I do have something positive, really positive, to end with today.
Yes, please do.
So, this was a little news item that almost managed to get past me. So Taylor Swift has given bonuses to every single person involved with her Eras tour in the amount of $100,000 to every single person. And so, like, a lot of people may not understand the enormity of that. Like, so when a very successful tour ends, you know, like the primary touring crew might get, you know, anywhere from $2,000 to $10,000 in bonuses. I mean, a lot of times it's just an extra paycheck, which may not sound a lot, but almost all, like the bare minimum is most of these people are making, you know, $1,500 a week. And I don't know anybody who can't do with an extra $1,500 in their pocket. You know, and not everybody gets the same level of bonus. And rarely do truck drivers and, you know, those types of folks get those kinds of bonuses. For Taylor Swift to have given $100,000 to each person that worked on this tour, first of all, is a shit ton of money. I mean, we're talking millions of dollars. And it's pretty extraordinary. My husband works in the industry. We had a conversation last night about, you know, like basically she has stood the industry on its ear and kind of shamed, so, you know, the industry itself, because these big shows, I mean, it takes hundreds of people to put on a big show like what Taylor Swift does. And, you know, I personally hope it starts a trend.
I do too.
Well, and especially if you look at what's going on with the writers' strike and now the actors' strike. You know, the big name actors, it doesn't matter. You know, they're fine. They're going to be fine no matter what. They may be bored because they can't really work. But a lot of the people that are really striking, that this means everything to them. I mean, they get screwed on a regular basis by these big studios, and you know, and now with the, you know, being able to use AI, it's a huge deal. So I have to give a big, you know, big hat tip to Taylor Swift, because what she did is nothing short of extraordinary, and really kind of plays into the whole role of kind of giving back.
Thank you, Tay-Tay. We love the Tay-Tay. She is her own economy. Thank you, Tay-Tay. She can actually raise the economy of any city she goes to. It's amazing. The number of people that need to be employed just for one of her shows is out of bounds. But, yes, so that is a positive. So everybody keep your eyes on what's going on, because shit's about to get interesting. We will see you next month with our next edition of the 415, unless something really earth-shattering happens, and then we may have to do a special show. We don't know. But anyway, on that note, check out wildhunt.org. Thank you again. Say good night, Star.
Good night, Star.
All right, everybody. We'll see you next month. I'll be back with Taliesin Govanen tomorrow. And you all take care. Watching the news. And don't forget to vote.